Hello folks, hope you are all doing fine. It's been some time since I have put a new video out. I just had my annual hair reset, so I may look a little different. Frankly, I was busy with few personal things and couldn't spend much time on the video. Also, I was working on few ideas parallelly and probably which wasn't a good idea. Anyways, I am back now and hopefully I'll be more regular here. Fingers crossed. So let's get started with the video. This one is more of an extension of my previous video. The last one was on how to deploy a .NET Core web app to IIS server or Windows Virtual Machine using deployment groups. You can find the link up here for that video. In this video, we'll continue on similar lines but try to deploy the same application on a Linux server using Apache. You can also use a similar approach if you want to use Nginx instead of Apache. I have put some reference links in the description box below which you can check out. Also, I thought I'll resume giving my book suggestions with this video. It may or may not be related to the topic, but are definitely a good read to increase your knowledge. With that said, let's get back to the topic and get started. Welcome back. So in the previous video, we had covered about deploying a web application, a .NET Core web application to an IIS server or a Windows virtual machine. So in this video, what we are trying to do is deploy the same application to a Linux server using Apache. So like in the previous video, we will again use deployment groups, which is available under pipelines, deployment groups, and we'll add a Linux server to this deployment group. And that is what we will be using to deploy our application. To start with, so let's create a deployment group. Let's call it Linux Dev VMs. And we have a registration script which we have to run on the Linux server for adding that server to this deployment group. So if you come here, you change it to Linux, then it will show the deployment script or the registration script needed to set up that server. So for that, first let's create a virtual machine on Azure, which we will use to deploy our application. So we'll create an Azure virtual machine. Let's select the resource group. So let's call it Azure DevOps. It's already there. And let's call our server as Azure DevOps Linux virtual machine. Rest everything we can keep it as same. We'll select the Ubuntu server image because we want a Linux server. Standard V2s we'll select, that would be sufficient for our use case. And let's open HTTP and HTTPS ports as well, and SSH we'll keep open because we need that for setting up the server. And we will use generate a new key pair, and rest of the settings we'll keep it the same. So let's go ahead and review and create, and click create to create the virtual machine. So it will ask you to download private key because we asked to generate a new key pair. So let's download this and save it. Let's give it a few seconds so that our VM is created. So our VM is created now. First of all, let's set up a DNS name for this. So we'll come to properties and set this name. We'll call it OC app and save it. Probably just add dev to it and save it so that it's easily identifiable that it's a dev server. So now that is done, so our DNS name is set, and let's copy the DNS name and keep it handy. We will be needing it later. Okay, so our server is set up. Let's come back here and connect to our server using the terminal. So let's open terminal, and in terminal I'm selecting Ubuntu. So I have opened a WSL instance on terminal. So WSL is Windows Subsystem for Linux. So WSL is a way of running Linux on your Windows machine, and through WSL you can install different Linux distributions on your Windows machine instead of having a dual boot or connecting to a different system. So this way you can easily work on Linux commands and using the WSL. So if you don't have WSL installed, you can go to this link, learnmicrosoft.com Windows WSL install, and you can go through the steps to install WSL. So it gives you the power of working with Windows and Linux at the same time on a Windows machine, as it is mentioned here. And you can install different flavors of Linux distributions and run it through WSL. The only restriction is that you should have at least Windows 10 and above to use it. I'll put the link in the description box also, so you can check it out. So let's connect to our VM. So to connect to the virtual machine, we'll use the key which we just downloaded when we were creating the virtual machine. So if you come to connect, it will show you the steps that you need to connect. So you can either use WSL on Windows, or you can use terminal on Mac, or you could use shell on Linux. So depending on from where you are running these steps, you can choose appropriate terminal. So if you are on Windows, you can use the terminal with WSL. So first we'll copy the key file to our home directory. So let's do that. It was in my downloads folder. I'll copy it to my home directory. Okay, I think I already have one. I'll just remove this. And now let's copy the file, and I have to change the permissions on this file to read only to use it to connect through SSH. So if you don't make it read only, it would not let you use it for SSH as a key file. So let's use change mode 400 on the key file. So if we see, we have only read-only access on this file. Now let's use the SSH command, and let's copy this to connect to our server. So now we have connected. First, let's do apt update just to update the registries, and after that, let's start with installing Apache server. So for that, on Apache 2, let's say yes. So Apache is installed. The next step is to enable few properties on it. So the first one is we want to enable request headers and proxy paths. So what are these? I'll talk about them later. So let's just to enable module headers. Then we also want to enable module, and let's do systemctl restart q2. So our Apache server is installed, and now if we go to new browser and just run this, you can see it opens the default Apache page. So now we would want to deploy our application, and we would want to see our application's homepage when we are running or we are accessing this URL. So let's come back here, and the first step we want is to install .NET Core. So since the application we are deploying is running on .NET Core, so we will need to install .NET Core to run this application. So for that, let's run few commands. So the first one is we are declaring a variable, and then we will use wget to get some files. So we are setting up packages from Microsoft, and then just do some cleanup, and after that let's do a sudo apt update. So now you can see that it has registered the Microsoft repositories as well, and after that we would be able to install .NET Runtime. So we want to install ASP.NET Core Runtime 6.0 because our application is using 6.0. So with that, .NET Core is installed. Now let's go back to Azure DevOps and use this registration script. So click script, or click copy script to clipboard, and click on using this personal access token. So with this, it wouldn't ask you to authenticate yourself when you are running the script. Let's come back to terminal and run this file. So when you're running the script, make sure you are in your home directory, because it creates some folders and it would install your agent on this folder. So let's give it a few seconds to install, and it is trying to connect to the server. So now enter deployment group tags for the agent, whether we want to assign tags to our agent. So we want to do that, and let's call it web because this is our web server. So just we are assigning some tags to easily identify it, and it is testing the agent connection, and we are done. So with this, we have successfully registered this machine, and it should show up here in some time. So now we can see that we have one machine added to the deployment group. So now we have set up our virtual machine or a physical server if you're working on a physical server, and we have connected that virtual machine to our deployment group, and using this deployment group we will be able to deploy our application through a release pipeline. If you're still with me, I hope you're enjoying the video. So don't forget to hit the like button and do subscribe to the channel if you haven't done it yet. You can also follow me on Instagram at omega_cortex. Thank you. So let's come back to release. So last time we had created a release pipeline. So let's create a new one. And this time we'll not use any predefined steps, but create an empty job. Let's call it dev Linux and add our artifact. So what build artifact we want to use? So from our project, we have two pipelines. We will use this pipeline. So that's the pipeline we had used, and we'll add it. So few additions I had done to our pipeline with respect to the previous video. So let's check that also first. We'll just open the pipeline folder. This is the pipeline we are using. Let's just edit and see the pipeline file. So to deploy to our virtual machine or a Linux virtual machine for a .NET Core application, the approach we will be taking is of a reverse proxy, because the .NET Core application which we will be running, it will be running on a Kestrel server, and from Apache we will be forwarding that request to our Kestrel server. So reverse proxy is a common setup for serving dynamic web applications. So what it does is it terminates the HTTP request as soon as it receives it, and it would forward it to our ASP.NET application. So to set up that, we would need to set up some services and some configuration files so that this mechanism would work. So for that, I have added two scripts. So I've created a new folder in deploy, and we have one Apache config script and we have a init service script. So config script would generate the configuration file, and it accepts few parameters. It accepts 3 parameters. So the first one is the name of the configuration file. The second parameter is the server name or the DNS name, which we will be using to access the application. And the third is the port number on which our .NET Core application is running on Kestrel. So this way we are setting up a virtual host and with a proxy pass, and whatever requests are coming on 80 port would be forwarded to our local host or 127 IP address with the port number which we are mentioning. So for that, we have to set up this configuration. So what this script does is it checks whether the configuration file is available. If it is available, it just updates that file, and if it is not available, it creates the configuration file and then links the or enables the file or enables the site, and also restarts the Apache server. And the next one is creating a service to run our application on Kestrel. So by default, Apache would forward these requests made to the localhost 80 port or the DNS name and the 80 port to the ASP.NET Core application running on Kestrel. But however, Apache doesn't have the capability to manage the Kestrel process. So for that, we have to create a service file which would start this service for us, or basically we can maintain that service using this service file and manage the process. So for that, we will use the script. Again, it works on the similar idea that if the file is there, it doesn't change anything. If the file isn't present, then it would update the file. Now, as these files are created in our repository, we'll have to also make some changes in the pipeline file so that these are included in our artifact. So by default, when the application is built, it will only build our .NET Core application, and it would generate the artifacts and publish it in a zip file. Now to include the scripts file also, I have added a script folder variable which points to a sources directory, sample web app deploy folder, and I have added a copy task just after the publish task of .NET Core. So if you haven't watched the previous video or previous videos, then this pipeline file is what does the build process, and it uses the .NET commands. So the first task is for restoring the NuGet, and then for building the solution, then it would run the unit tests so that it would publish a code coverage result and then publish the application. And after that, we have added the copy file task. So the files from the scripts folder would be copied to artifact staging directory and deploy folder, and after that it would be published. So that's the change which I have made to this file in comparison to pipeline file we had when we were deploying it to IS server. So now let's come back to our release pipeline, and we have added our artifact, and this is the continuous deployment trigger. So as soon as the build is ready, it would trigger this release. For now, we are keeping it disabled, and let's come to our release stage and add few tasks. So since we are using deployment groups, we will not be using the agent job. Instead of that, we will click on this 3 dots and add a deployment group job. So from this, we can select our deployment group, Linux Dev VMs, and it has picked up and found one matching target in this deployment group where we want to deploy. So if we want to run it based on tags, we can add our tags here, which we had set up when we were running the registration script. For now, let's keep it as it is. Let's uncheck this code coverage report because we don't want this for deployment. We just need the drops folder, and we can see our deploy folder also is available here. Now let's add our task. What we need is a bash task. Let's click add, and before that, so we'll use the inline option, and we'll add commands here to deploy our application. So before that, let's create few variables. So the first variable create is app name, and this would be the name for our project. So let's copy this name. Next, environment, and we will call it development, and both of them scope we'll keep it to our stage, the dev Linux stage. And next we want to create is artifact directory, just to make it simple. And for that, we'll need the path. Let's just get the path from here. So this is our default working directory. Under that, we have .NET Web App and drop. This we will mark it as artifact staging directory so that it becomes easy to use in our script. Okay, I think for now we are good. And let's come back to our script. So the first command we want to put is, let's remove this and unzip our sample web app to this folder var ww and app name. So O option would let you overwrite the file even if files are already present there. So for the first deployment, it doesn't matter, but then subsequent deployments, obviously you will need to overwrite those files. So this is done. Next, we want to call or create our service. So now our files are published to our hosting directory, and now we are running the service initiation script. So it takes 3 parameters. The first one is name of the service. The second one is the name of the DLL. So if we come back to our scripts, you can see the first parameter is name of the service, and the second is the DLL, which is our application DLL, or the DLL through which our application is running. And the third parameter is the environment, ASP.NET Core environment. So app name, since we want to use the same name on both places. If you want to use a different name for your app name or the service name, you could create another variable and give that here. But the second one, make sure that you are using the right name of the DLL, and third is the environment. Now once that is done, the third one is for our Apache config. So where the first value is name of the configuration file which we want to create. Again, I want to keep it same, so I'm using app name. The second argument is the DNS name through which our application will be accessed, or the server's name in the configuration file. So I have put our DNS name, which we had set up a few minutes back. And third is the port number on which the Kestrel is running, so that the Apache server will forward the request to that port number. Now with this done, we are done with this step. But before running our deployment, we have to do one more step, that is to enable our user to be not prompted for passwords whenever we are using the sudo command. So sudo is like running as a root user, so it would prompt for password, and we have to disable it so that we are able to run these services. So let's come back to our terminal, and let's go back to our home directory, and we have to run a command called sudo vsudo. So it would open the sudoers file which helps you set up these exclusions. So let's come here to end of the file and copy a script, just put it here. So what I have done is, as it is mentioned up here also, root is the user and where it has given all the privileges. So for our user, which is called Azure user, I am setting up the privilege all and no password, so it will not prompt for password when these commands are run. So systemctl, Apache CTL, change owner, touch, unzip, sed. So all these are commands which are used in our file. So we'll just press Ctrl X to save this file. Yes, and then enter. So with this, a sudo file is updated. We can just open it again and see if the changes are there, and it is there. Let's press Ctrl X and come out. So with this, it would not prompt whenever these commands are running for a password. With this set, I think we are done with all the changes required, and let's try running our pipeline. So let's go to release. While we wait for the deployment to complete, here are my book suggestions which can offer you a good read. The first one is The Phoenix Project, a novel about IT, DevOps, and helping your business win. A captivating and enlightening book that offers a unique and engaging approach to learning the importance of DevOps. Unlike any other technical book, it provides its insights through a novel format with an engaging storytelling experience. And guess what? This book also has a sequel to it. The next one is Indistractable, How to Control Your Attention and Choose Your Life by Niriyal. This is a book I'm sure every one of us would relate to once we start reading it. It is a practical and insightful guide that tackles the widespread issue of distraction in our digital age. The book explores the reasons behind our tendencies to get distracted and provides actionable strategies to regain focus, increase productivity, and lead a more fulfilling life. Enjoy reading. And our application completed. That was pretty fast. So it downloaded all artifacts, then it ran our script. So it created a service, but then we had one issue because we missed a step. So unzip command not found. Okay, so let's fix that. So one step we missed was to install zip. So let's do that. Sudo apt install zip. Yeah, I had the impression that the VM would have the zip, but it did not. Okay, so let's just redeploy it. So I think probably the only thing missing would be the files which we would need. So let's come back. It's downloading artifacts. This time it's taking a little time. So it is, looks like it's done. Let's just open the bash and quickly verify. Yeah, so it did unzip and everything seems to be fine. So let's see if it worked. So let's just refresh, and maintenance or capacity problems. So let's see what went wrong. Okay, let's try removing service, and meanwhile let's also check if our files are available here. It seems our application is present. So let's go back and redeploy. And if we could run a deployment pipeline in one go, that would be a miracle. Okay, now let's refresh it. Let me troubleshoot it for a while.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
Okay, I don't know what went wrong, but then I removed the .NET installation on Ubuntu and I reinstalled it, and after that it started working. So I didn't do anything special. Yeah, to assist with, I did find a blog post which kind of helped me to remove the .NET and then reinstall it. So this was quite helpful. I'll add this link also to the description, so in case you run into a similar problem, then you should be able to come out of it. The probable reason I think happened was it somehow conflicted with whatever was already on the server or the repositories linked with Ubuntu. What I did was just to reinstall .NET Core on the server, and it started working. So no other changes on the pipelines or any files, and it started working. So now if you see, it is loading, but then it is loading the connection string from what is mentioned in app settings, the default one. So how do we override this? So for that, what we can do is, let's come to our file and we'll make a change here. So for now, we'll just edit it here and we'll add our environment variable equal to, so the way it is in our file is, we open this, it's under connection strings, and under that it's under default connection. So usually in the code we would access it either using the get connection strings, or if you want to directly access it, we can use connection strings : but in the Linux environment, colon is not supported, so instead of that we have to use $_. So the same applies if you are deploying to an app service which is running on Linux. So we'll use $_ and we'll default connection. So that's how we are setting our environment variable, and we'll put the value. Let's remove this and put it as connection string, and let's commit this file. Now I'll come to a release pipeline, edit this, and we lead another task called replace tokens. So it's a free extension and you can install it. So if you have access to your Azure DevOps administration, then you can install it. If not, you can ask your administrator to add it. It's a free extension and you can easily install it. And now I can add it and just move it above my bash. So we can just pick the directory where we want to use this, and we can mention the file name. Yes, in our case, our file name is this. So let's call this. Okay, so we need to make one change. So we could use custom also. If you select the token pattern based on which it moves, we can select custom and define prefix. So we'll come here, we'll edit it once more. Let's call hash. So that's the token pattern would need. Let's comment this file and we'll use the first pattern, that is hash and double brackets. So with this, it would do a token replacement. Now how this works is basically it goes through all your variables and it will try to find that variable in this file. If it is there, it would replace it. So in this file, we have mentioned it as connection string. So let's come to variables and add our property connection string. And to put here, as the connection string has some symbols, we have to properly escape it. So for that, we have to call systemd escape and pass our connection string. Then it will give you a value which needs to be actually used. So we can just select and right click and put it here and come back to tasks. So with that done, I think we are good. Let's save it and create a new release. Now in this file, we don't have a mechanism to replace our service file, as we can see that it is, if the file already exists, it doesn't change it. So that's something probably you can take up as your task to change the script to make it updatable. So a similar example is available in Apache config. So maybe that you can take up as an exercise to modify this file and make it updatable in each deployment. For now, let's just stop our service and remove the service file. So the service file resides in etc systemd system. That's where the service file is. So we'll just remove this and let's come back here and run it. Now it's completed. Let's come here and refresh the page. So now you can see the value is updated to load it from the environment. It may at times require some troubleshooting to set up it on Linux server, and you will have to play around. So with that, we have successfully deployed our application on Linux server, and it is running in the similar fashion how it was running on the dev server. So with that, let's wrap up the video. I did get a question on my previous video about deploying PHP applications on Linux using Azure DevOps. You can use the same approach we discussed in this video to deploy PHP applications. Probably you wouldn't need to set up a reverse proxy like we needed for .NET Core. Otherwise, the process should be pretty much the same. I do have few more suggestions which I will try to cover in future videos. Let me know your feedback about this video in the comment section below. If you want me to cover any other use case, let me know that as well. Thanks for staying till the end. That's all in this video. You can find something interesting to watch here. See you there. Adios.